And here we are, live on YouTube. Hey everybody, my name's Julian David. I'm a product expert over at Townsend Labs, and I'm just beyond excited to have both Jacquire King, Grammy Award-winning producer, engineer, and Drew at UA, Drew Mazurek, here on the stream today. We've been following a little bit who's been joining. It's super awesome to see that many people joining us today. We didn't really quite know what to expect, and I'm just super stoked. I don't really want to give a big intro. Thanks to all of you guys for joining us. I'm sure there will be more coming in later during this Q&A session. And we're going to dive right in. I think this is going to be a fantastic conversation with these two guys. There's way more knowledge with these two guys combined than I could ever provide. And so I really feel like I'm standing on the shoulders of giants here. And so without further delay, I'm going to introduce you guys to Drew and Jacquire. How are you guys doing? Good morning to you.
Good morning. Doing great.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, the Sphere L22, one of the pieces that we're going to be talking about, the technology, is a fairly, by default, a fairly conventional condenser microphone, a large diaphragm condenser microphone, this guy right here. And I'm not going to bore you guys with too many details about that. There's lots of videos on our channel. But just for those of you guys who are so far unfamiliar with the L22, it's a dual-channel fat condenser microphone, a great sounding mic in its own right, and this was actually something that was very much suggested and encouraged by pro users in the very beginning when we were developing the microphone, which is that it just has to sound good. It just has to be a great sounding microphone right on its own without any of the bells and whistles, but without any of the modeling. And so the L22 is a great sounding mic in its own right, but of course, that is not what makes it special. What makes it special is that the bottom of the microphone actually has a 5-pin connector. And what that allows us to do is take the front and the rear of the microphone out onto 2 channels into your recording system. So what that means in turn is that any recording that you're doing with the Sphere L22 is going to require 2 input channels on your audio interface. And of course, it's really great when you have something like an Apollo or any other interface where you can link those 2 channels, because that gives you consistent gain across the 2. And then we're taking that into our recording system. And I'm going to show this here in a screen real quick. So here you have the pairing of the physical microphone, the L22, and then the software, the plugin, which runs in your existing DAW and also in real time in the console or Luna applications, of course. And so with the combination of these two, you're able to monitor in real time, at the moment, 30 stunning sounding microphones, really get the greatest sounds of recording history. And you're able to do all of that either in real time as you're recording, but you're also able to do and just record, you're able to record the raw signal and then do all of that processing after the fact in your DAW. And that also means that you can automate these parameters. And so it's really a very comprehensive package. And just beyond the modeling itself, there are just amazing tools in there that you can go in and you can do. Like I said, it can automate parameters. You can, for example, balance out a vocal comp that you're doing if the singer was kind of moving in and out of the microphone. Lots of features that I think we'll cover in a little bit today. You can even record in stereo with a single mic. So there's some really powerful stuff that you can never do with conventional microphones. And really, it's a great tie-in with something like an Apollo or Aero interface, and of course Luna, because it's kind of like the first piece of the signal chain that is now accessible in the exact same environment, in the same workflow, and with all of those benefits that all the UAD and UA users will already be familiar with. So that's kind of Sphere and Townsend Labs in a nutshell. We're committed to microphone modeling. That's all that Townsend Labs does. And we're excited about it, and we're excited about working with partners like UA and others to really give you a real-time, crazy good sounding workflow. So yeah, with that being said, I want to kick it over to Drew and Jacquire, and maybe just give a quick intro for those that are maybe coming over from the Townsend Labs side and are not quite familiar with what Luna is.
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, Luna, we're calling it Luna Recording System. It's basically a marriage between, the Apollos that we've had out on the market for quite a while, and a recording system attached to that. The goal here is to create, as always give the user a low latency experience, no matter what's happening. So, we have this ARM mode that we have in Luna, which leverages the DSP paths on your Apollo to get things to the monitors and to get things to the queues as quickly as possible.
Hmm.
So yeah, we've done if users haven't been familiar with it, we've done a bunch of streams on it. Um, and of course, you can always go to the UA product page to get some of the more information about Luna. And we'll be talking about it a lot and showing it a little bit today, a little bit of screen time for Luna. So, and we're happy to answer any questions in the chat as well. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, I should have said this from the beginning, but of course, we're not here just to broadcast and tell you guys everything that's amazing about Luna and Sphere. This really is intended as a Q&A, and we have Jacquire with us, and you, Drew, and myself to, try to answer as many questions as possible. We've had a couple of questions submitted ahead of time, and we're going to try and cover those as well. But of course, we, are absolutely thrilled to get more questions in the chat here on YouTube. Jacquire, how did you first get involved with Luna?
Well, I've had it's kind of a long developed relationship I've had with Universal Audio because it's 10 years or so, I guess. Just because the plugins they started making, I thought were really great, and then we started having conversations about working in the box and hacks that I was coming up with about how to actually commit some of these these plugins to actually how to work out you could record with them, and so those conversations kind of just continued and led into what became console and the technology that was that they developed and incorporated into the Apollos, and then the logical progression is then to the Luna recording system. So I've sort of longtime user, longtime fan, and then also been in these long-term conversations with them about how I use it, what I like about it, what I think could be better, and that's what's great about the company is they really pay attention to their users, and they're really looking at the needs of the your record maker at large, I guess, if you will, and then also paying attention to what the pros are doing, people that have a little bit more experience. So, it's just kind of been a long-standing relationship, and then so I've known about these things for quite a while, before they've come out, because I've been privy to developing and being involved in them, which I'm very grateful for those opportunities, because selfishly, not only am I everyday user of Universal Audio's stuff, but I believe that they are at the forefront of creating what is the recording studio, the format for the future for the majority of people. I sincerely hope that the studio, the institution of the studio is always there to stay, where you have these classic rooms with people that have really formal training, and there's this gear that's available, and you can go and you can have a real experience recording music. But that's not for everybody all the time. The economics of the music business have changed. So so selfishly, it's like I see all this technology as being the combination of the future, and I want to be involved so that I can use it, so that I can lend my opinion and experience for whatever it's worth to help shape it. And then Townsend Labs comes along, and they it's like Townsend's not the only one doing this mic modeling thing. They do it, I think, at a superior level, because of using the two diaphragms and all of the way that the technology works. But in a way, it's kind of like it's an element in it now when you combine it with Luna and the Apollos. It is the studio of the future, really.
Yeah.
You're able to use all these really fabulous emulations and this technology, this availability of technology, at such a small fraction of what it would be to have a facility where you could have a tape machine, an API console, a cupboard full of microphones and, a stack of tube compressors and all that stuff. I mean, I'm not saying no, but none of us are saying that this is a direct replacement for it. It is an option. I feel like at this point the technology is so good, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of on a little bit of a rant, but I kind of want to explain why I'm so kind of, I'm so into this is because
Preach it,
technology
here. Preach it.
Yeah, well, thanks. Technology is getting to the place where it's kind of arguable what sounds better. And in a blind taste listening test, it's like, sure, maybe you can always predictably pick out the one that you think you prefer, but the odds of that are pretty small. And then really it's sort of arguable. It becomes, it's like, do they sound exactly the same? No. But do two LA2As, two Neve modules, two U47s sound exactly the same? No, they don't. So the technology is at a quality level where you can make, if you have the creativity and the vision to make a creative record, and you have music, you have something that you want to get out and express, the technology is at a place that it is not subpar. It is of equal. And so, I mean, I think that that's a really fantastic thing. And so that's what's exciting about these technologies and being involved in it. So, like I said, selfishly, I have really enjoyed the relationship that I have with UA. They've, embraced me as, someone to be involved with, it's like, and to have recorded the first multi-track session in Luna with Cass McCombs, which, is a free download for anybody that can, access the Luna software. I think that's also a really wonderful opportunity to share and kind of get involved and look under the hood. There's a lot of really cool things with Luna, and it, unlike other, it's called a recording system because it is more than just a DAW. Mm-hmm. But if you it's a digital audio workstation, and if you compare it to anything else that's out there, Luna has a sound. It has a vibe. It is chasing and curating the feeling of being in a studio and working on a desk and with tape machine. It has a sound and a vibe. I mean, every other DAW is sort of more neutral, and you have to do a bunch of work to get it to sound like something. And now we're kind of getting into this place, where Universal Audio is now kind of, they're curating something even more powerful, something that's like with character and identifiable. So it's just very exciting. All that stuff's very exciting to me.
Cool. Yeah, well, you kind of did the segue to the Cass McCombs session already, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit. And I just put the note in the comments here as well that of course that is available for download for free, the exclusive source multi-track through the Luna app. There, when you go to the home or welcome screen, there's a link right there. And
it's in the create page, and it's
right,
going to be in your upper right hand corner. In your upper right hand corner, they're called Luna sessions, and Jacquire's Cass McCombs sessions was the first one, and then we also had Atticus Ross do another one called Rotation, which features the mini Moog, and that one's also definitely worth a download. And they're unique, and they're not. We have many more in the pipeline. These are unique opportunities to peek into the workflow of somebody like Jacquire, and not only hear the results, but to kind of be able to see a little bit behind the curtain, which I'm sure we'll talk about here. So so definitely encourage people to download both of those sessions and check them out. They're definitely worth your time.
Yeah, and so there's lots of good stuff there. I had a blast, checking this out. I actually thought the vocal sound with the double track left and right was really interesting. And then you also ended up using the Sphere L22 for the strings room on that particular session. And if I understand correctly, that was not part of the original session, but it was actually an overdub that happened at the UA studio. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Jacquire? How did you end up using the L22 there in that application?
Well, I thought, honestly, in all honesty, I think being at United and the setting up the setup we had and the software was basically out of alpha and sort of in its beta stages. It was kind of a daunting task. It was a lot to put together.
Yeah.
I realized sort of at sort of, when it was a little bit too late, it's like I sort of missed an opportunity with the L22. And then once we got the song recorded and the discussion turned to like, gosh, wouldn't strings be cool on this song? That was going to have to be a subsequent recording session because, okay, we need to get a string arrangement made. We need to sort of work through all that. And so it was like, hey, let's show that, okay, we've come to United Recording. We've set up in this pro environment. We've put together this really big Apollo rig, and we've used a little bit of it. We've used a little bit of the console in the room. We've used a lot of Unison stuff. It would be cool if we did the subsequent overdub of the strings, and we also did some background vocals. If we did those in another location and a little bit of a remote location, and so we missed an opportunity to use the L22 in the tracking session, but let's use it. Let's definitely incorporate it in the string overdub session. So we went to Universal Audio's production space. It's a studio for video and audio, and we set up, and we kind of set up a little bit more of what is a real world studio environment, like many of the users out there would probably be in. It's like we had a computer hooked up to some Apollos, and that was our studio. And microphones. And I just thought, because I hadn't yet used the L22 in stereo, that I would like to really hear it used as a mid-room to kind of capture the ensemble. So I was really eager to do that. I think it was a stellar outcome all the way around, and it played. Obviously the strings are not like the feature instrument in the Cass song, and the room tone versus the closer focus mics. It's like it is not like a heavily presented sound in there, but it's definitely very much a part of the capture. It was a sound. Those tracks are captured in a way that if I had wanted to lean a little bit more on that mid-room capture, it would have been awesome. It would have been perfect. It performed flawlessly, and it was cool to get to use that stereo mode, because that's probably not the most common way people are going to use this microphone, but it's it's totally as good as any other aspect of what the technology provides.
Yeah, and I mean the cool thing about it, of course, is that because it's these two, basically the way it works is you have the microphone and you turn it 90 degrees to where you would normally have it, and then you have a left and a right capsule, essentially, because you have the two outputs from the two back-to-back cardioid capsules. And then with the plugin, you can fully control the stereo width of that, and it's full mono compatible. And you have all the different options, of course, with the different microphone models. And I guess on this particular session, you ended up using the Ocean Way collection, the 49s from that. So the Ocean Way collection is actually something that is an additional purchase that you can basically get from UA to expand your sound palette even further. Was that kind of an obvious choice, or did you experiment with that a little bit?
We experimented with it a little bit for sure, but part of it was, 49, M49s, M50s are often used in, classical recording, Decatrie setups, and so, and there's a reason that they're chosen for that. It's because of just sort of the low frequency response and how, just how they capture a room. And so we played around with it a little bit, but, it's just like, it just felt, Bill Putnam and Ocean Way and all these things. It's just I think there was a little bit of a sentimental choice, but we did listen around, and that's totally a mic choice that is suitable for what we were trying to capture.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the cool thing is you have access to these sort of iconic sounds, and it's totally fine to go with something that is a bit emotional or sentimental. Rather than being completely analytical. And the great thing is, of course, the way you were using it, you can still come back to it because all of these parameters can be changed after the fact. And you might find, maybe somebody wanted to remix the track and they wanted to have a completely different sound. Then, that can easily be done. And again, this session is available through Luna. And so anybody that's interested in that, definitely download that session and check it out. I mean, we know a lot of people that use the 180 stereo mode for acoustic guitar, for instance, for drum overheads, and it's so fast and so easy that I think it may be a little bit underestimated in the beginning, but once you actually start using it and what it can do, we have some other comparison videos on our YouTube channel. So definitely something to play around with, and it's something that because we have this 2-capsule technology, is something that is really, really unique to this. Especially when it's combined with the real-time monitoring through the Apollo and in Luna. So let's see. There's a couple of questions here. There was one that I spotted that I thought was really interesting. So this is from Matt Wright. Jacquire, I love the song and the drum sound on Wines of Lebanon. Do you think you could get close in a home studio with 2 Sphere L22s in a Glynn Johns kind of method and using the Ocean Way collection? So, this is, of course, specifically to the drum sound. I actually don't quite remember. What did you use on the original session on the drums?
Well, it was a little bit more, it was more expanded than the Glynn Johns approach, just in terms of microphone. But I think you could, well, to answer the question, I think that you could get the quality of drum recording. Yes, I think you could get there. I mean, we have to understand that there are so many things that play into the way that those drums sound. It's
right.
It's the context of the song that they're in.
Yeah.
It's the dynamic and way that the drummer played them. It's the instrument. We're in a very, United A is a very big room. It's it's not, I wouldn't say it's a dead room, but it's not, for the size of it, it's deceivingly focused, I guess, so I think with a little bit of effort and keeping all of those things in mind, absolutely. I mean, for sure. I mean, Julian, we've talked about, I'm interested at some point when it makes sense to have, I have one L22, but to have multiples and actually do a drum recording and sort of figure that out for myself. But I believe it's completely possible. I mean, in the Glynn Johns miking technique, you're not going to have that really tight, dry snare sound that we have in the Cass tune. I mean, now if you kind of are careful the way where you're positioning the drums and how they're tuned and you can get that, you can kind of do a variation on the Glynn Johns thing. I think to do the Glynn Johns, you actually need 3 microphones, not 2, because because the Glynn Johns, even if you were to use the overhead mic in stereo, that's not Glynn Johns. You'd have to have sorry, Siri's trying to interrupt again for whatever reason. I don't know what her deal is. You need to put a mic on the kick. You need to put an L22 on the kick. Yep. One directly over and one off to the side. Yeah. But I mean, I 100% think you could get a great sound that way. I mean, I'd probably pick for the overheads, I'd use a couple 87s or 67s. Glynn would have used 67s. I know that like on Led Zeppelin 1, it was 67s. And then I'd try like a D20. Well, I guess there isn't a D20, but like a D12. There's a D12A and E in the library.
That's right.
So, I mean, there you go. I mean, you can definitely get the Glynn Johns sound. You'd have to, specifically to copying or using the Cass drums as something to nail might be a little harder. But that's just kind of keeping all those things in perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just posted a link here in the chat as well. So we just prepped some, ready to go Luna sessions with our pre-recorded tracks, and one of them is a drum recording. It wasn't tracked in Glynn Johns, but it was tracked in Recorder Man, which is somewhat similar. in the setup, and then there's an additional kick and snare and a room, and so kick, snare, and then the overheads or recorder man setup. Those were recorded with L22s. The rooms are something else, but that's available for download right away from our website, and that's a good. It's kind of a vintage drum sound. I forget what it exactly was, what kind of drum kit, but I think that could be fun to experiment with that. And one thing that I really like to do is, you have that one microphone that's right above the kit, right above the snare. And so what you can do, and actually this might be a good opportunity to share my screen here, and actually show the console. So let's see. So here's console. And I'm actually talking through a Sphere L22, which is right above my head here. And so this is what the plugin looks like. This is actually what we call the dual view of the setup, because it allows you to blend two mics together. So you have mic 1 and mic 2. You don't have to do that, and it's still mono. So this is not the stereo setup that we were talking about, but the standard mono setup. And you can blend two flavors together if you want. And there's some other features here. But one thing that's cool when it comes to the Glynn Johns or Recorder Man setup is to actually take that mic that's over the drums, duplicate that or mult it out to another bus, and then reverse the mic. Because then what happens is now you have your regular overhead, but also you have a microphone that points to the ceiling. And then, taking that and running that, for instance, through a reverb or even something like the Ocean Way reverb is really, really cool, because you have, something that's it's like an additional room mic essentially. And of course you can EQ and compress that completely differently than your overhead mic. So that's something that I really dig.
That's a cool tip, and it's a very kind of more of a diffused vibe, because it's all reflected sound coming back down from.
So all you need to do is hit the reverse button, and now you're listening to my ceiling.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
That's an awesome tip. It reminds me of like the way in a very reverberant space or a tight space that has reverb, where you don't want to put mics far away from the drum because it's too echoey.
Yeah.
But you put microphones close to the drums, so the proximity to the kit is the same, but you face the microphones away, and you catch that ambience. That's a fantastic trick. I like that.
Yeah. While I'm at it, I'll just run another instance of Sphere here real quick. I'm working in console right at the moment. This is what I'm using for the broadcast, but I have Luna running in the background as well. And so this is what the plugin defaults to, and it's what we call the single view of the plugin. And basically, this gives you immediate access to all the core parameters that you need to get a great sound quickly. And so you can just very, very quickly cycle through the different microphone models. At the moment, the plugin and the microphone comes with 30 included microphone models. When the microphone came out, and I think Drew, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were pretty much early on, right? You were like one of the. Did you actually go through the crowdfunding campaign as well, or was that later?
No, I think I was just after that possibly, but
Okay.
I know the guy Eric got me one pretty early on.
Yeah.
So I mean, at least two plus years ago.
Right.
I want to say.
Yeah. So we started with 11 microphone models, and then we added 9 more to 20, and then just very recently we added 10 more. So this is always intended as a growing collection, and I mean, so with that one microphone, you're now getting the sound of 30 different microphones. All the classics, of course, that we're so familiar with or not familiar with, but have heard them on countless classic records. And then you have full pattern control here. Generally, everything that's highlighted in green is something that the original microphone would have had. So 251, for instance, has cardioid, omni, and figure of 8, but we're also giving you in-between patterns. And then just a full kind of toolkit of things you might want to do with the mic, like high pass filter. You can virtually rotate sort of the on-axis response around the mic, and the reason why you might want to do that is just to get that slight coloration at an angle. So pretty common thing would be to do that. Let me switch to my live mic here. just to get a little bit of a different flavor. So especially on axis, most mics have like a pretty strong presence peak. And if you have somebody that's just a little bit too sibilant, then you can just kind of tame that. And I think you might actually hear this while I'm talking with those S's compared to where I'm back here. There's just definitely kind of like a presence peak that's gets kind of shaved off. And then, I could blend in a classic 67, go all the way that way. And like I said, all of this is available in real time. So, Jacquire, we were talking about this earlier. I mean, of course, for somebody like you, you have access to all these amazing microphones, but maybe not all of them at all times, right?
No, I don't. Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I have a good microphone collection of my own personally, but I don't own a 251. I don't have a 49. I've used them plenty of times, and I think they're amazing. But no, I don't own them. So, I mean, that's kind of what's so cool about this. It's like when I start a project I want to get to know what the vocalist's voice is, how I'm going to capture that. So I'll set up a bunch of mics and shoot them out, because I don't want to put my best microphone for the vocalist as the drum overhead. So, spend the time to figure that out. But that means you got to own the mics. It's like I have a 47, I have a C37, I have a 77. The list kind of goes on. I have these things that I can use, and I try them all. But this is, like having the L22 and all these models. It's like you can put a vocalist in front of one microphone, one performance, and then go through and figure out which mic you want to use on them.
Yeah.
Now, me personally, I like deciding things and committing to them. So, for me, after making that decision, I put the Sphere plug-in in the record effects and just burn it down.
So you're printing.
Print it that way.
Yeah.
I don't like to defer decisions unless I feel like it's something I'm really going to need to do.
Yeah.
But and then it's just like and then Luna with Apollo UA plugins, you can demo or audition, should I say? You can demo them if you don't own them, but you can audition all the different mic pre's, API, the 610, the Neve. Now we've got the 1084. All kinds of things, and then figure out what compressor you want to use. It's amazing, and to be able to shoot out a 251, an SM7, a 47, a 67, a 49. You're talking about close to $100,000 in mics, maybe. Yeah. So it's that's not really for everybody.
Yeah,
you have to go to. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, and then there's also, we talk about the sound most of the time, and how close is one to the other, but there's a whole workflow aspect as well, right? So, we did the last Q&A with Baines and Flo, who've been doing a lot of like hip hop, modern rap tracking, and tracked the latest Gunna album with the Sphere L22, and they traveled to Jamaica into like some mansion, and they did the recording there. And they had some gear shipped, but it wouldn't have been feasible to ship that array of microphones. And another one is Jason Goldberg, who's been on another stream here. He keeps sending me these Instagram shots of him like tracking on tour buses, tracking in green rooms. When it comes to like rappers, and their lifestyle, you like having an Apollo and a Sphere mic is all you need to get an amazing sound, and it just speeds up the workflow. You can save an entire signal chain from the mic all the way down to whatever effects and autotune you want to use. And so there's a financial aspect, but then there's also a workflow aspect. I think a lot of people nowadays, they don't necessarily want to have all that much stuff, and so it just really depends on what you want to do and how you like to work. And what I like about both UA and Townsend Labs and Sphere is that you have the option. You can use like you were saying, you can commit to everything going in and have your sound right there, or you can leave all the options for later, and it's really up to you to decide and make that call. So it's just super powerful. let's look at some of the questions here, and let's see.
Yeah, I think we got our expected unison question, right?
Yes,
Yeah, we kind of
we have our expected unison question. Yeah. So the thing is with you have a microphone and then you have the unison technology, and the unison technology, it's the first slot both in console and in Luna, and then you have the Sphere plugin with the microphone modeling, and of course the physical microphone is always first, but then the question is where in that chain do you put the Sphere plugin?
Yeah, it's
Drew,
funny.
can I kick that over to you?
Yeah, sure. It's one of those things. I get that question a lot myself, and one of the things it seems logically counterintuitive for them to be reversed, but when you actually do think about it, it makes sense. The goal, the main deal with Unison is an impedance matching and gain staging. So you still want your preamp to be doing that. So it's, even though it seems like it's slightly out of order, you do you can and I dare say you should be using Unison preamps in the Unison slot in order to get the impedance interaction appropriate for the preamp, as well as take the guesswork out of the gain staging and take on the gain staging of the modeled hardware, as well as the tonal characteristics of it. And Apollo preamps, being digitally controlled analog and being able to be linked so that for a fact you're getting the exact same settings to each one is super important. Yeah. So it's just one of those things where it seems slightly counterintuitive, but it's perfectly fine to be using a Unison preamp in that Unison slot, and it does its job. And then the mic modeling can come after, and that is the appropriate sequence.
Yeah, that's right. And this is actually exactly what I'm doing right now. So I've shared my screen again here. I'm running through the Neve 88RS Unison preamp, and this is kind of the settings that I stole from Jason Goldberg, because that's how he tracks his rap vocals with that setting and a little bit of compression on it. So if it works for him, it works for me too. And then I'm going into the Sphere plugin in the first insert slot. And so in Luna, this would be very similar. Let's switch to that, where now, we would be running, a Unison plugin on the input right here, and then we would have the Sphere plugin as the first. Actually, at that point, you can choose. Either you're going to have it as the first insert on the recording side, or you have it on the monitoring side, and that's really kind of whichever way you prefer to do it. You can commit to it, but you don't have to. So Drew, how do you typically track with Sphere?
Well, it's funny. My journey with Spheres has taken a little bit of a turn because of Luna. I am I'm probably cut from the same cloth as Jacquire, and have always been started on 2-inch tape and consoles, and to me the idea of committing, that's what you did, right? You didn't hit record until it sounded good. Like the idea that you would hit record when it doesn't sound like you want is very counterintuitive to me. Like that's so my typical workflow with console and Pro Tools prior to Luna was that I always I always loaded it into console on the record side of things, and I would commit it, right? And with Pro Tools, you do have the ability to take the mono output of the Sphere plugin and print it to a mono track. And I preferred that workflow as well, because I just didn't like the way stereo tracks felt or worked in Pro Tools. But then Luna came along, and it kind of changed things for me. And I can if you want, I can show you what I'm.
Yeah, if you want to share your screen too.
Talking about. Yeah. So the idea here is that with Luna is being able to. I've actually flipped the script on myself, and I find myself doing less committing, and primarily because of this one little feature that Luna has, which is this ability to do, if you right-click on the panner, to do this simple stereo pan.
Oh, I didn't know this. Awesome.
Yeah, so if you right-click on the pan knob, you get this simple stereo pan mode.
How cool!
And that one little feature has sort of changed the way I have used Sphere.
Yeah.
Because I do find myself now much more often, having that feeling of a mono plugin. I know the native plugin actually down mixes stereo to mono. This is not that. This is not down mixing to mono. You still have, you still are keeping it the same way, but I do find that just that little change makes it feel more natural to me.
Yeah.
And then of course, if you do decide, once you get things the way you want, you can use our bounce down feature, right? So I can bounce down my individual track, right? And it will bounce out as stereo, and then I can bring it back in, and now it's here. And then I simply select it, and in the edit menu, or I'm sorry, in the track menu, I can do convert to mono.
Okay.
And when I do convert to mono, it spits that out.
Yeah.
And then I can just go ahead and I can just delete one of them. So that's a very quick way of rendering of course, I still have the original. I mean, I still have that, and I can always go back to that and tweak it. But
and
this way
this is interesting, because we actually had, with pre-Luna, we had some customers who would use console, and they would actually go through an aux to basically record both the wet and the dry signals. And it seems like with this, I mean, most likely you're going to just go this route, do your comp in stereo, but then once you've got your comp done, then you bounce it to mono, split it up, and now you're not wasting DSP resources or anything like that.
Yeah, Luna's done that for me entirely. I mean, like it has changed my workflows in many ways. No longer do you need to do all of those kind of split workflows. I mean, if you look at my console setup, part of my default are these return channels. So these are virtual channels that I labeled return 1 and return 2. And that with something other than Luna, I'm having to go in go in raw and cycle through Pro Tools, and then for playback I come back out through a virtual in order to be able to monitor the same signal path and with the same effects. But it's it's a little tedious, and you're jumping through hoops and so forth. And so this kind of takes that out of the equation.
Cool.
So that's kind of that's a little bit about my journey with Sphere. And Luna kind of changed that for me because of that. Just that once, it's funny how that one little simple tweak changes things for people. So hopefully that's helpful for people out there.
No, I'm sure it is. Yeah.
Luna's workflow and the sound of it has simplified a lot of things. It's pretty awesome. It's kind of gets back to simpler mindset, which is awesome.
Well, when we first talked about it, Jacquire, I remember that one of the things that stuck with me was how you were talking about, like, a lot of the times you were talking about the feel and sort of just the vibe of and the sound of using a DAW, and it's interesting because I feel like that's something that typically is not in the vocabulary when you talk about DAWs. So that to me is pretty interesting. I mean, Luna is still new to me too. I mean, obviously it's not been out for that long anyway. But just like getting to know it and figuring out like, how the gain structure work and how how you need to drive things to make them sound the best and that kind of thing is really, really interesting. Let's see, what else is there here? There's a bunch of questions. Thanks guys for contributing here. I think we should get into a couple more questions.
Let's answer some of these questions.
Yeah, sure. For sure. Let's see.
I saw in there, Julian, somebody asking, can you make a Unison version of Sphere? And the answer to that, Unison is all about the preamp aspect of things. So it doesn't really apply in the mic modeling kind of context. It's the idea of Unison is impedance and gain staging, which is typically applied to mic preamps as well as high Z inputs for amp simulators and so forth. So again, it gets back to that where it seems like you want the mic modeling to be first and then the preamp, but as we explained, it's just not it's not needed, and it doesn't apply really.
Yeah. I would add to. I mean, I think that is personally. I also do believe that is the way to do it. You pick your mic pre, and then the Sphere should be the first. Either put it in your record effects or put it in your monitor, however you want to do it. But in terms of like signal chain, it makes sense that you need to have the mic pre in the way that these things are ordered. I mean, I understand in the real world that, the microphone is the microphone before it gets to the preamp, and we're not exactly doing that. But, the plugin knows what the mic sounds like. It understands what it's being given, and then it transforms it into the modeled microphone. So if you're just adding that preamp color along the way, what I wouldn't do in the Unison instantiation prior to the Sphere plugin is do any EQ or do any compression.
Mm-hmm.
That you should get the signal to the Sphere, as quickly as possible. And then I typically don't EQ vocals when I'm recording vocals. That's because I've made a mic selection that makes for the appropriate decision there. But sometimes it is necessary or you're kind of going for a specific thing or a character, to do some EQ, compression. Those things, whether you commit them or not, should definitely be monitored or sequenced in the signal chain after the Sphere plugin. But I'm totally with you guys. It's that you definitely should be using an emulation in Luna or console of a mic pre, because as Drew has explained that the technology is optimized to give the microphone the impedance and sort of interaction that like a Neve would have versus an API, because that is part of the color and sound of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We're getting some questions here. I think I've seen two about acoustic guitar, and one of them is generally, Jacquire, what would be your favorite choices for recording acoustic guitar when it comes to mics? What kind of comes to your mind first, regardless of whether they're available in Sphere or not?
Things like, well, my personal favorite these days has been the Mojave Audio, the MA200.
Mm-hmm.
But there again, in Sphere you have an 87, you have the 414s, the TL2s in there, 67. There's a lot of great large diaphragm condenser mics. So that would probably be my main acoustic guitar mic choice. Yeah. I often like to record in, two microphones of very different sonic signature. So typically my higher fidelity microphone for the capture will be somewhere around the 12th fret, in that area. Mm-hmm. That's like a whole other discussion about recording acoustic guitars. But there's a UA video.
Yeah,
I was going to say that too. I love that.
Yeah, we got a UA video you can watch for sure.
I have not, So my technique is like two distinct microphones and trying to combine like two different vibes. I have not yet tried the Townsend in stereo. Mm-hmm. And trying to do a similar application of that. My hunch is that it probably worked pretty well. To be able to pull up a 67 on one side, and then like a 57 on the other. Yep. And then sort of have that sort of stereo thing going on.
Mm-hmm. Sorry if I may interject here real quick, because again, this is also, I'm going to put the link up again in the chat here, because that's also part of what we have available in those sessions. So there's an acoustic guitar session that we can demonstrate as well. So definitely something to check out for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. I mean, now what you have if you're using one L22 in stereo mode, you have the mics in the same, they're at the same kind of location in relationship to the microphone, as opposed to two separate mics. But
yeah, that's true, for sure.
That would really be the only difference. I don't know that it's necessarily a hindrance. It's just I look at all these limitations, if you will, or as creative opportunities to think. To problem solve and be creative. I try never to look at a technical hurdle as a roadblock. It's just okay. It's just I need to think about something differently.
Yeah. For me, prior to Sphere, I used to do I had a Flea 47, which I ironically sold after getting Sphere. But I had this Flea 47, and I would do Shep's CMC 6 bodies with MK4 capsules in XY, and that was kind of my go-to for acoustic guitars. And when Sphere came in, it was kind of cool because I could still do that, and I'd have the mono mic facing, and then the XY underneath of it. But what was cool about Sphere is I could take the Sphere and turn it 90 degrees, and all of a sudden I now had what Jacquire was just saying, in addition to the XYs. So I could do like the modeled stereo, but also the Shep stereo, all in a very compact and time aligned kind of setup. So it's it took my core workflow and then expanded it. So it was, which
Yeah.
is
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, we do have, like I said, we do have those demo tracks that you can download where we have comparisons of like spaced pair of L22s, but then also the single mic stereo left and right. We also have a video on our channel about that. And, and then there was another question here about getting great results or avoiding boxiness in a small room. And this is definitely a very, very kind of common question. I've put it up on the screen as well. This is from Matthias.
Yeah, this was a revelation for me. This Chris's blog on this.
Yeah.
The blog that Chris wrote, I'm sure that's probably what you're referring to.
That's what I'm referring to. Yeah. So there's Chris wrote a blog on our website on townsendlabs.com. Basically, the title is Optimize Your Vocal Booth. And again, I'm going to post a link here in just a moment. And so, what you can do with Sphere is stuff that goes much beyond what you could do with conventional microphones. So let's see, I'm going to go to console here real quick.
I can tell you when this blog came out, I read it and I was intrigued by it, and I downloaded the files and I listened to those and tried the technique, and then I immediately started to employ it in my studio, and it's subtle, but it totally works. And
and so
I thank Chris for that.
Drew, would you mind showing this on your computer real quick?
Sure.
If you share your screen. And so in the Sphere plugin, what's interesting, which is why I wanted to bring yours up here, is that we have these three different ones. Maybe we should touch on that real quick. So there is the Sphere Core microphone plugin, and then we have the two add-ons. So we have Ocean Way and we have the Putnam collection. And so Ocean Way and Putnam are add-ons that you would have to buy separately, but the Sphere plugin comes with the Sphere microphone for free.
Yeah, so here's the basic one,
and that includes both native versions and UAD versions. So what we're seeing here is actually the native version.
Yeah, you can tell that by the lack of the UAD toolbar there.
Yeah, so that plugin is actually available for free on our website. So anybody can go to townsendlabs.com, create an account, and download the native installer. And of course, there's the UAD trial as well. So, with that, you can really dive in and familiarize yourself with the plugin and all of the capabilities, including, the things we talked about, like stereo, and also, what we talked about just now, avoiding boxiness. So when you go to dual view, the really powerful thing is off-axis correction. And so what we found is, with off-axis correction, what you can do is you can basically, reduce some of the issues or design flaws of those original microphones. Even though they're fantastic microphones, condenser microphones in particular, they tend to have a frequency response and a polar pattern that very much differs depending on. So the polar pattern, at high frequencies, it gets more directional, and at low frequencies, it becomes more omnidirectional. And part of that can cause problems when you're in less than ideal spaces. And so what we found is when you engage off-axis correction and then go to something like, super or hypercardioid, both for vocals, for voiceover, but also acoustic guitar, it's an extremely powerful feature to just reduce that boxiness, that low mid-range kind of room resonance. And so check out that blog post. I just
it's a very simple. It's very simple, but it makes a big difference. And you do want to make sure you stay in the dual mode, because I found out the hard way that when you close that interaction actually goes away.
Yes,
right?
I mean,
is that right, Julian?
It saves it. So when you go back to dual view, it has the same settings. But yes, it's not just a view; it's actually sort of a mode, if you will. And
so make sure you stay in that.
While we're on this, this is, again, what I think I mentioned this. This is what we call the dual view of the plugin. And so this is actually not stereo, right? It takes the input of these two capsules and it creates a mono signal out of that. So, and that's what gives us the ability to, change the polar patterns and all that. So when I blend in, like what Drew is doing here, a second mic, it's still mono. It's just that now I'm getting these two flavors. And I think there was a question here about, how do I change the level between these two mics? And that's exactly with the mix control, right? So that allows me to go, 50% or whatever. It's like as if I had two faders. It's just that it's on a rotary control. And, of course, yeah.
Multiple miking like guitars and many things, and blending those two mics is a very common, recording technique,
Yep.
That I implore, and lots of others do. And so like kind of having it all at your fingertips like that is actually pretty astonishing.
Yeah, there's a question here regarding Ocean Way and Putnam, that they're add-ons. This is coming in from Hockey Canada. So does that mean that the Sphere Core plugin needs to be an insert, or can we use the add-ons by themselves? So the add-ons, the Ocean Way and Putnam, they're dedicated plugins, and they go instead of the Sphere plugin. So you don't need to run one after the other. And in fact, both Putnam and Ocean Way, they do include the core microphone models. So when you go on the list, oh, Drew, you can get this down, man. I'm gonna.
Yeah, that's just yeah.
You're gonna do the demos for me. So those core microphone models are available to you. So with the click of a button, you have this vast range of microphones at your disposal, and it's really awesome.
Yeah, and to be clear, I don't know if we made this point clear, but the Putnam and Ocean Way, they are exclusive to the UAD platform.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, so you need to have an Apollo, and you need to have them, have purchased them on the UAD platform.
Yeah. Cool. Let's see.
Did you want me to show the 180 mode, Julian? Is that, or you want to take the screen back over? What do you? I switched over to that.
Yeah. So I mean, in 180, it looks very similar. But the difference here is that now I actually have a mic left and a mic right, and that gives me a true. Now instead of having what I said before, the two inputs and then having a mono signal, this is actually a true coincident stereo, and you have that width control there right under the polar meter, and that allows me to basically, because it's so coincident, the capsules are so tight together, it's perfectly mono compatible, and I can really play with that and have it super wide, or and this is something that don't forget, this is all available after the fact if you want to. So this can actually become a mixing tool. It can become a part of your dynamic mix where maybe you've tracked an acoustic guitar that way and you want to have it kind of an omni and tight and mono in one section of a song, and then in another section, in a kind of a breakdown bridge, you go pretty wide and natural sounding. And so there's a lot of things you can do there to play with these parameters that previously were baked into a recording. So there's.
I have a question,
Yeah.
Julian. Actually, is the modeling interpolating the left and the right, and is it making any account for the fact that your source is probably actually being facing the null? Is it kind of accounting for that?
So generally, what you want to do is when you record in stereo, is actually have off-axis correction engaged, because what that does is it's typically like a 47 at 90 degrees. It if you talk into it from the side, obviously the level will be slightly lower, but most importantly, it'll actually sound radically different from the from the on-axis sound. And what happens most of the time is that it just gets duller and duller, and so you're losing a lot of that on-axis presence that you would normally have. Well, with off-axis correction engaged, we're compensating for that. So now you're actually getting, on the one hand, a sound that's much truer to the original, at 0 degrees, and also a much more stable stereo image. So especially if you have something like, acoustic guitar or drums, you're getting a much more natural image. If it's something like a room at a distance, it may not matter as much. But definitely, kind of as you get closer to the source, it'll matter a lot more.
Cool. Always wondered about that.
Yeah, Jacquire, is that something that you used so far on those string sessions? Do you recall?
The off-axis.
Yeah.
I don't remember to be honest, but
yeah.
It's good. I mean, it's good to know that. I don't remember. I think if in the moment, I don't remember all the decisions we made. But
no, and I mean, at the end of the day, if it sounds
sense.
good, it is good. So, I think it's definitely something to play with. And again, this session is available, and so anybody can try it out. There was something here in those questions that we got. So we talked about stereo to mono. Oh yeah, this was submitted from John Baker, and actually refers to the different plugin types and AU, bringing in AU plugins as well. Is there can you can obviously use AU plugins? Are there any limitations when it comes to like virtual instruments and that kind of things, or?
In Luna, Luna's?
Yeah.
Luna supports AU plugins and instruments. But not you don't want to be using them on an armed track. So the idea is, because that goes against the whole low latency mode, because the CPU is having to adjust those. So, the concept with Luna is that on, obviously the Unison stuff and all of your record effects must be, UAD DSP plugins, but even anything that you're monitoring through, so should be UAD DSP and needs to be in order to create those low latency paths. But when it comes to instruments, AU instruments are treated exactly the same as Luna instruments are. So they have their own dedicated buffer. There's a dedicated instrument buffer that pertains to those. And then with our ARM mode, you're actually able to run AU plugins or Luna instruments live with low latency while going through UAD processing. So it's really well thought out, and there's no buffers in Luna. There's nothing to adjust. You never have to think about anything. Just go.
It's so weird.
Yeah,
it's
awesome. A little bit. Yeah, it's awesome. It really is.
Yeah.
This goes back to what Jacquire was saying earlier, is being a direct workflow and sort of hearkening back to a time where people just thought of the music and didn't think of the technology, right? Imagine that.
Yeah.
A point in time where you went into the studio and spent the entire time thinking of music and not buffers, right? Who wants to think of buffers?
Yeah. No, for sure. There was one question here that came in about, have any of you used the Sphere L22 in 180, so in stereo mode, on an electric guitar cab, for instance, like blending a 57 or and a ribbon? This is coming in from Mad Wright. Jacquire, is that something that you've tried so far?
I have not tried that, but actually, during the course of this conversation, I'm asking myself, well, why haven't you tried that yet, Demi?
Yes.
So I am going to try it. I mean, just because I guess we sort of started talking about the acoustic guitars, and then the fact that you can blend the mics the way you can, because even if one amp and two mics, or 4 amps and 6 mics, if I'm doing that, I'm blending it all down to one track.
Yeah.
That's just how I am. It's like, it's a guitar performance. I don't care that I have 6 mics. It's like, because I have some blend of them. I mean, chances are, if you print every amp and mic separate in your DAW, you're going to establish your blend, and it's probably going to stay that way the whole time.
Right.
And then if you are trying to mix it and you're trying to figure out if you should change it, you're wasting your time, because you've been listening to it the way you had it the whole time, and so for me, I just want to commit and try to dedicate as much of my thinking to like moving forward in the creative opportunity. So I definitely will be trying that very soon.
That's an interesting thing. People when tracking, they think that they're giving the mix engineer options, and that's a good thing. When the reality is, the mix engineer does not want options. They want your best attempt at the sound in your head on one track. That's what they want.
Yeah.
So it's funny.
I mean, I got some guitars that, like, song I mixed recently. There's a couple. I mean, many of the guitars I really love the sound, but there was a couple that were just for a pain in the ass, and it's just like, I just figured out how to reamp them. I mean, they were distorted guitars, but you can reamp distorted guitars. It's just because it's really what I needed to do is I needed to change the frequency response, and it wasn't like the quality of the distortion or the parts were great. It's just like they just don't fit in a good spot.
Yeah.
So I just like had to reimagine them. I mean, it's very rare that you paint yourself into such a corner that you can't work your way out of it. We kind of have touched on it. I know there was a question just about signal chains. I mean, I would say, without getting too hyper specific, I mean, I think what most people want to know about is like vocal signal chains.
Yeah.
Well, so here's the deal. You have a vocalist. Typically you have them singing to a bunch of different mics, and you find the microphone that sounds like it's it's not too bright. It's got enough chest tone. It represents the dynamic in their voice really well. It, you know, all the texture and depth of what you feel like their singing voice should feel like. You know, oftentimes for me, what I'm after is what the person actually sounds like to me in the space. It's like it's true to them. It's a very accurate is not really the right word, because nothing about recording is accurate. It's all, you know, it's all a sort of a translation, and but just something that represents like the best qualities of their voice. So I mean, just do the work to find the right microphone. I mean, this system provides a fantastic opportunity to do that. And then, you know, once I've identified what the microphone is, then I'll go and audition all the different mic pre's that I have available to me.
Would you go, Jacquire, would you go as far as to go out into the room and physically be in the space with them as they sing to kind of get that vibe? Would you do that?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, typically when I'm working with somebody, they've already sung songs to me,
Right.
you know, in a space. So and I've had conversations with them, so I understand the timbre of their voice, you know, speaking voice, and yeah, I mean, sometimes absolutely, Drew. I'll go out and just kind of like, what do you sound like out here?
Yeah, that's cool.
But that's the same. I mean, for me, that's the same of any instrument, because the sound is at the source. You know, we just don't randomly throw a microphone in something. I don't, anyways, and I don't think this is the way you should engineer, because it's not the best quality sound. You don't randomly put a mic in front of something and then go in the control room and twist and crank on it until you get it to sound how you want. I mean, you can do that, but I guarantee you that sound will not blend and hold up and translate as well as, you know, making sure that the source is in the right spot in the room. You got the right amount of ambience control. Choose the best microphone. That's how you make a great recording. You know, it's just like, if anybody is familiar with Al Schmidt and watched some of his videos, I mean, there's like some videos out there of watching Al record. It's like Al doesn't do anything hardly. It's just like, what's he doing? You know, he does because he really knows what he's doing, and he knows how to do something very simplistically. With, you know, he has such a great ear. I mean, I don't know how many Grammys Al has for, you know, his engineering is spectacular, but it's really simple. For him, it's about you choose the mic, you know, you position it at the source, and then that's kind of it. You know, that's it. So, but back to the signal chains. It's, you know, select the best mic for the source, and, you know, primarily talking about vocals, because that's, I think, what most people that are out there, you know, interested in this are looking at, and I think that's what the predominant use of the L22 mic is going to be used as, is a vocal mic, right? You know. Or it's at least going to get a lot of duty that way.
Yeah,
then,
for sure.
Find your best mic pre, and then you know, after, typically in my scenario, it's just like I've had a singer sing the same verse and chorus on like 6 or 7 different mics, and then once we identify the mic that we want to use, then they have to do that exercise again for as many mic pre's as I have. So by the time I get to the compressor, it's like I'm ready to give them a break.
Yeah.
So then I'll just take my recorded performance that I like, that's the microphone and preamp choice, and I'll patch it into the compressors I have available to me, and I'll find the compressor that is the best. And that's my signal chain.
Yeah.
My signal chain is the best capture for the instrument, voice or otherwise. So do I use an SM7 a lot? Sure. Do I use a 47 a lot? Sure. A C37A, and I'm talking about vocals a lot. Yes, I do. But you know, it's just like I have a wonderful C37A. I have used it on Dallas Green, James Bay, you know, so that's like City and Color. James Bay is James Bay, and then Parachute, Will Anderson. You know, three amazing voices, and they sounded great on the C37. But they did not sound good on the 47, you know?
No.
And some people that sound great on the 47 didn't sound great on the C37. So it's necessary to have those choices to kind of get the best capture. Can you muscle your way through with a SM7 or something? Absolutely. Is an SM7 a very common and usable choice? 100%.
Yeah.
And it's an affordable choice that everybody can have. And it's also a mic that you can use on a snare drum or a guitar amp or, whatever.
Sure.
But that's, that just to kind of answer the question about signal chain. There's the usual suspects. Do I use an LA2A a lot or an 1176 on vocals? Yeah, but not always. So that's the way to think about it. And these tools provide an amazing opportunity to check that stuff out.
Yeah, awesome. I want to before we wrap things up. Actually, there's a couple of kind of more technical questions. Drew, maybe we can get into those separately. But I think one more thing that I wanted to ask. Well, actually, there was one thing that I wanted to mention regarding the electric guitar recording that we were talking about. So blending, two microphones together right in the Sphere plugin. We just did a video with Cassidy Turbin in LA. He's a multi-instrumentalist producer. He did I think several of the Grammy-winning Beck albums, and we did a session together where he actually used the Sphere microphone in stereo on a guitar amp, and it was a Roland jazz chorus with a chorus that actually goes to the different speakers, and so that's really interesting. And we actually have a breakdown of that session coming as a video, so that'll be really interesting. Hopefully, maybe around August or something like that.
Awesome.
But really cool.
The JC120, one of the heaviest amps ever.
Yeah, but such a cool sound.
Yeah, it is.
Great.
So,
there's one more thing here that stuck out to me in the comments from Matt Meyer. We've been talking about the vibe and the feel of Luna. Is there anything going on in terms of DSP processing in the background? How does that work? Like, how do these things come together so that Luna has this specific sound? What kind of makes that?
Well, Luna has two different sort of sides to it. It has its native side and it has the DSP side. The DSP side we've spoken about, and we did a deep dive on the ARM mode, and that's all about the DSP in your Apollo and the pathways in the Apollo and the cues and the monitor outs and all that stuff. But there's also a native side to Luna, and this is kind of new for us to, Luna is a native app. It runs on your CPU, and so are Luna instruments and Luna extensions. So when you get Luna, Luna is free. You also get Shape, which our guy Tom just did a great deep dive on that yesterday. If you haven't seen that, be sure to check that out. Amazing sounds that come free with Luna. It's about 10 gigs worth of sounds. So much you can do with that. You also get an arpeggiator for free. So you get Oxide, you get Shape, you get this arpeggiator. All of that is native. Anything that's and same with the Neve summing, which is available on your buses and the main out. So Luna kind of has this two sides to it. It has a split personality, a native side and a DSP side. And it works seamlessly, as we mentioned, no buffers, no thinking about anything, just go, just do what feels natural. And it just kind of, it almost anticipates what you want to do and what you're doing. So, so hopefully that answers the question. I think if that was the gist.
The tape emulation and the console emulation, all that stuff is happening on the native side. And that's kind of what gives, in terms of playback and that analog feel, vibe that Luna has, that's where that is all being kind of done.
So you feel like you can kind of like push it a little bit if you want to, and drive different aspects of your mix.
Sure.
And that kind of thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because you have the two gain settings on the Neve, high and low, so you can kind of change the headroom value there. That particular project I mentioned a little bit ago about where those guitars, I had to reamp them because I wasn't digging the way they sound. I ended up throwing the Studer at 7.5 inches per second. Because it was cool the way it shifted the octaves of stuff down, kind of rolled the top end off in a cool way, and the bottom got kind of gushy and cool. And the roll, that frequency shift was super cool, and that stuff's all being done on the native side of Luna, and you can't have that super low latency record path stuff and headphone management. That stuff has to be done on the hardware. So it's like this really amazing pairing of technology that this is the first time that any company or any product is able to do this, and it's kind of just given it's in the early stages. Where Luna can go is just kind of blows my mind when I think about it. But it's this is the early stages of the future, and the future's now with this stuff. I get messages and comments from people all the time because I mostly mix in Luna right now. But it's just so transformative. You get your mix to where you think it's pretty good in another DAW, and then you kind of like render it out and then port it over to Luna to finish it off, and it's just like, whoa, that's so much better, so much easier. You end up doing a lot less on your mix bus. So just all these things are just super exciting.
Yeah, I figured while Jacquire's talking, I could just throw up on the screen here. You have your master machines over here in the contextual browser and you have all of your presets that can be done there, and you have all of these global settings. This happens to be for the Studer, which is a paid option unless you have the plugin, and then it's free. But then on a channel by channel basis, you can adjust the saturation, which is basically a reciprocal gain. And then you also have the ability to tweak the little repro and playback and record electronics and so forth. So this is the stuff that's like, this is all native. It's all being done by your CPU, as is the Neve summing.
Cool. Is there, Jacquire, this came in from Jeff Taylor at Taste the Notes. Is there a specific sweet spot that you find in terms of level that you would always kind of aim for?
Just in recording? I guess that, no, yeah, well, it's hard. Sorry, that question's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to answer because it's not, because I don't know if it's about like, are we talking about printing a mix level? Are we talking about multi-track levels? I don't think we should be recording things at full scale. It's like it's somewhere in the middle, and it's different for everything. It depends on how much peak information is in there.
How much low end.
Yeah, exactly. Like a hi-hat is not going to have much like VU meter energy, so you're not trying to get it to be full scale because it's just too much. It's just like, that's just the wrong way to record it, because if you end up like a hi-hat, if you've recorded it really loud, where's it going to be your fader in the mix is going to be way down. I think the general rule of thumb is, in a way, and this is not, well, it's not a rule, but like a perspective you could kind of look at is if all of your faders on your multi-track session were near zero, the level at which you should record at is almost your mix. So a bass, like a bass instrument's probably going to be somewhere in the like -12 to -6, kind of floating around in there. A kick and a snare is going to be peaking near zero, but then it's sort of like RMS. Its tonal energy is going to be -9, 12 kind of range. It's a really hard question to answer. I think you should take experience and like if you end up recording. No, thank you, Siri. Like if you're recording guitars and you're having to crank them up above zero, or you're having to turn them down to -15, well, there's your cue about how you should. That's your learning curve about where you should be placing your level. There are no absolutes. Well,
I guess the Cass McCombs session might be a good example to check out and see where are the levels at in that mix. And then also, if you have with your Apollo, if you set the inputs to a mic input, you can actually go into ARM that channel, and you're recalling that tracking channel strip. Is that right, Drew?
Yeah. There's one of the features of Luna is that it has the ability, it stores and manages your input chains, and it's actually logging them in the background. That at some point down the road that could probably become a full blown channel strip feature, especially if people hit the feedback button enough times. So make sure you're doing that. But yeah, when if you download Jacquire's session and you look at that snare drum and you set it to a mic input and you arm that track, you'll see the preamp that Jacquire used. You'll see his settings. And of course, who knows? We don't have that mic, we don't have that drum, but it gives you some insight, and it gives you some, and I think you'll be shocked at sometimes the simplicity of things, and then also the uniqueness and the difference that each little thing makes in that chain.
Cool.
I would, I think that's a good example. And just if as the Cass McCombs as a reference point, those are kind of low level recordings. They weren't playing super loud.
Right.
So I had, it's just like, so I wasn't trying to make a hot recording out of it. I let it be a little bit quieter because that's what they were doing, and, I mean, you do have to consider like signal to noise ratio and that sort of
Sure.
stuff. I wouldn't want to record something at such a low level where the noise floor was an issue. But yeah, I mean, it is definitely a good example. When you check it out, just keep in mind that it is, those are not, things are going to seem like, well, that's not recorded very loud. Well, they're not playing very loud, and it's recorded to a place, you also have to gain stage things to where you're not like, over amplifying something or under amplifying something. It's like if you listen to the difference between 50 dB of gain, 40.5 dB of gain, and 40 dB of gain on a Neve 1073, you will not only notice, yes, it's changing the level, but the character of the sound. You start to get up into the headroom. 40 with a microphone like a 57 is going to sound different than the 45 gain setting. Now it's because you're getting up into the headroom of the electronics a little bit more. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that's a bad thing. So it's you have to consider what those different gain settings sounds like tonally because of the way that signal is interacting in the unit. And this applies to the emulations as well because they're pretty exacting. So that snare drum might sound better on that 45 setting as opposed to 40. But then you're going to maybe at 45 you're going to have too much level. So then you turn the output down to get a better recording level. So gain structure is not only about like how loud you want something to be, but it's like signal to noise, it's tonal. There's all these different things, and it's just like, well, how much level am I going to take from the microphone through the Neve and then into whatever compressor I'm using? Where does the compressor sound good? How hard am I driving it? These are all things to consider, so it's such a deep question to answer. I mean, there are no rules. Things with low frequencies will appear louder on meters.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Luna helps you in gain staging. We've done this a few times on the office hours where those tape extensions, you get a free one with Luna, it's oxide, and on playback, you can actually kind of tell whether it helps you. It'll help educate you as to how hard to drive things. Like, I guess, Jacquire, maybe you're saying, if I heard what you're saying right, had you done the Cass McCombs stuff more gained up or whatever, it could have lost a little bit of its dreamy quality. In other words, those gain staging decisions impacted the overall feel of the record. You could have over aggressivized it, so to speak, maybe.
100%. Some of the depth, some of that softer depth and nuance of what was happening would perhaps have been lost. And it would not have sounded as dreamy and gentle, because if I had gained things up to make the recording louder, then I would have been getting up into the headroom of things a little bit more, creating a little bit of distortion. Now, I love distortion, but it's just like how much of it is desirable. So yeah, that's a very, very good point. These are things to also consider.
Cool. All right. Well, Jacquire, we've already had you on for longer than we initially wanted to, and so I think we should call it a wrap. And then Drew and I can jump into a couple more technical questions. But
sure,
man, I mean, obviously we could keep doing this for days. I would want to, but I totally understand that you got to get back to getting some work done. So yeah, thank you so much for doing this with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolute honor, and hope we can do this again sometime and get you some more mics and do like
I would love that. I would love to share the drum mic. I really, for myself, selfishly, I want to do that, and probably next week I will be recording the guitar with this in stereo.
Awesome.
Two mics.
Keep us posted.
Yeah.
Okay. Julian
cool,
and Drew, I appreciate your time and having me on, and thanks to everybody that tuned in and the good questions, and yeah, go out and try this stuff. It is the future.
Cool.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks,
See ya.
Jacquire.
Thanks,
See ya.
Jacquire. See ya. All right. So with that, let's see. There we are. Let's get intimate.
Yeah. So we got some.
Yeah, so
some-
there's a couple of things here. This is more about, Sphere, Luna, Apollo generally. This comes in from Javier Amado. I use UAD, Luna, and I own the L22. I wanted to know, do you have to use the mic on inputs 1 and 2 of either the Twin or an X8P, which are the interfaces I own? And
Yeah, well, what you want, the thing about Sphere is that it needs two identically gained preamps, and that's what makes it so ideal, such an ideal match with Apollos or even Aero. I mean, they're digitally controlled analog mic preamps, and when you link those channels, it ensures that the exact same processing is applied to both, and that's exactly what Sphere wants. Otherwise, not that you have to use it with an Apollo. I mean, in fact, the calibration mode that you guys came up with, I think is just brilliant. The idea of, putting the mic in calibration mode and outputting the same signal to both so that I mean, that was just brilliant. That was a brilliant problem
I was showing
solving.
this in another Q&A. So first of all, you don't, obviously it works great with an Apollo, but you don't have to have an Apollo. You can have any other audio interface. It's or even, it's really easy when you have something where you can digitally control and link these two input channels. It just makes your life a little bit easier because you have one single control. But you can totally make it work with an analog Neve style preamp where you have stepped gain, or even like you were saying with a continuous gain control on an analog console. Maybe you have something like an SSL, even one of the smaller ones, or more affordable interfaces with continuous gain controls. You kind of put it in the right ballpark visually, and then you quickly run the calibration routine, and you're good to go. So, but yeah, it's just very, very easy and fast with an Apollo workflow.
So if you had a Twin and an X8P, or is that what I think that what it was? Is I would probably I would say the X8P is being the higher end rack unit. I would encourage you to use that one over the Twin, but the plenty of hit records made on Twins, so there's nothing wrong there.
Yeah, and that's the Jason Goldberg Q&A that we did about tracking for Rich the Kid. There's another video coming out in 2 weeks, and yeah, that's what he uses. Apollo Twin, hasn't upgraded to an X. It's just a Twin Mark II, and the L22. Boom, done.
Yep.
So, so let's jump through here. There's a couple more. Again, I'm super excited about all the great comments we're getting. Much appreciated. It's definitely a fantastic response here. Let's see. We talked about Unison. You know what? Drew, why don't we talk about ARM real quick? Because I think to me that was one of the things that really stood out to me when it comes to like getting started with Luna and Sphere, and what potential stumbling blocks, if you will, could be.
Yeah,
you walk us through that workflow.
Yeah, I think Seattle Recording, I noticed this was a little while ago. Hopefully they're still around. They had asked about this idea of recording recording a clean version of the mic while monitoring the signal. And that's one of the, we talked about this earlier. Jacquire mentioned it, where this is one of the things that Luna has solved, right? The simplification, right? If you're an Apollo user for the last 8 years, you're used to using console and a DAW and doing a certain amount of bouncing back and forth. And if you wanted to record the raw sound of the mic, but listen to it and then also monitor it on playback, that took a little bit of jumping through some hoops, and I mentioned earlier my workflow with those return channels, and that kind of all goes away, right? And it's all in this single unified interface. So here I am in Luna, and the idea of ARM, which Julie mentioned, ARM, accelerated real-time monitoring. I just did on July 2nd, I did a marathon 2.5 hour video on it. So I won't obviously repeat that. So please go watch that, because we get into all the details. But the short answer is that if you look here on this particular track, I've got, we have an input section. And the input section is comprised of course, you assigning the physical input. In this case, I have mic 15 and 16, which is where my Sphere is plugged into. So you've got the input starting at the top, and then you have your Unison slot. And in this case, we spoke about this many times today. Definitely, for sure, you cannot go wrong. You will not regret using a 1073. I assure you. I know that there's so many people out there who think, no, I don't want to commit the mic preamp. Yes, commit the mic preamp. It's a subtle coloration. Of course, you can overdrive it. You can ruin it. Don't do that. But please do commit the preamp. And then we have these record slots. And if I actually make these larger, or actually if I hit fixed slots, it'll show me all 4 of my record slots. So in Luna, I have the Unison slot, and then I have up to 4 record effects. And so if you were wanting to commit, right? So this is if for those of you that want to commit, like Jacquire would bring the preamp up here. And now this preamp, this Sphere plugin.
Sphere,
yeah, the Sphere plugin is now in the record effects, and I will be recording the output of that to a stereo track. And that's where I mentioned earlier the idea that it's both sides of the same thing, and then you can just strip away and get one or the other one. But to answer Seattle Recording's question, it's just in Luna, it's a simple matter of just doing this. Drag it down to the inserts, and you'll notice that the first 4 inserts are special. And when you have ARM mode on, they are also DSP based low latency monitoring. So in this channel strip, I am committing the coloration of the Unison preamp along with whatever else I have in here. It's then recorded, right? And we're all, all you Sphere users are used to seeing waveforms that look like this. And then it's flowing through the inserts, and having the modeling applied, and then that's what's going to the monitors, and that's also what is going to the cues.
Yeah, and that's at the point where it goes through the Sphere plugin, it actually becomes a dual mono output of the plugin.
Right.
Because it takes that information. When you have the vocal, and you see in the waveform, as you in your timeline, you see that the left has a lot more level than right. Well, that's because the left channel is actually the front of the mic, and the right channel is the rear of the mic. And of course, when I'm doing something like vocals, there's always going to be, like anything that's close mic'd, there's always going to be a lot more level in the front, so on the left channel, than compared to the back, and that's just normal, and that's expected. It's the way it's supposed to be. But once you run it through the plugin and it does all its magic, you have a solid mono output, even if it's dual mono. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And then for those, in case you're just joining us, you remember earlier I pointed out the idea that for me, I've completely changed the way I work. I am way less likely to commit Sphere now because of Luna and because of this simple little ability to go to a simple stereo pan. This makes it turns a stereo track. It makes it look and feel a bit more mono. And frankly, that was, I love committing and I like that. But part of a lot of the reason why I didn't want to commit, or I wouldn't quite commit or I wanted to commit more often, was not having to deal with the stereo track. Because so that makes life a lot easier. So, Luna and Sphere are a good match because they're, it's all in one window. You can pick and choose, and you can just drag what you want to happen.
Let's talk about UAD versus audio units real quick, because again, for those of you who didn't maybe catch the intro, so obviously, or maybe not so obviously, Sphere is supported not only on the UAD 2 platform, but also on all native platforms. So AU, AAX native, AAX DSP as well, and VST. And so, of course, in Luna, we're talking about audio units versus UAD 2. And, the difference being that, anything that's UAD 2 is going to be processed on your DSP, whereas anything that's audio units is going to be processed on your host computer. And there are some implications here when it comes to ARM mode, are there not?
Yeah. So, if you are, I'm showing the Ocean Way version of it, but the plugin that comes with the mic is available. You'll notice here when I do the type ahead here and I just do TOW, it's going to show me both of those versions, and they look identical. But the universal
and they sound
audio
identical.
one, and they sound identical, right? So in this particular case, if I'm going to do this ARM workflow, then I'm definitely going to want to choose the UAD version of the Townsend plugin, which has the UAD bar at the bottom. And in fact, if I were to try and bring this one on, you'll notice in the upper right hand corner here, I get an error. Actually get a message from Luna saying, "Hey, this track is armed, and this is an AU plugin, so
Hmm.
I will put it on there, but I'm going to have to bypass that for you because it's not, AU plugins, all native plugins are counter to the low latency paths that DSP. That's why DSP is still king, right? We still think that DSP is the best way to do a low latency path. So of course, when I unarm the track, then my AU version of the plugin comes right back,
Yep.
and you'll notice it's only differentiated by not having the UAD bar at the bottom.
Mhm.
And this is perfectly fine for mixing. So you could use the UAD version during tracking to take advantage of the ARM mode. But then when it came time to mix, you could switch over to the AU to save some DSP. So just a little bit of education, a little bit of understanding about what's going on, and that they'll users will be able to get done whatever it is they want to get done.
Yeah, no, awesome. When I saw that, I just really thought that was so cool. And you were already mentioning the low latency, the guaranteed low latency performance, both in console, but now of course in Luna, when you're using the UAD2 version. I mean, that's the reason why Townsend Labs is a third-party developer for UA, is because we want to, like with a microphone, you want to be able to hear the result going through the plugin at all times, even if you have a busy mix session and your buffer size is already pretty high. I mean, in Luna you don't see it, but you'll notice it at some point. But then having the ability to run the UAD 2 plugins on the Apollo and have that guaranteed low latency monitoring path through ARM is just incredibly powerful and really the thing that makes this microphone be such a creative tool at the end of the day.
Yeah. And we kind of had to be in control of everything in order to make this work. Jacquire's a good testament to that. Like, the idea that this system can be attracted, it takes him back to the way he used to work. It takes me back to the way I used to work. It's like that the goal is always just immediacy, simplicity, stay focused on the music.
Yeah.
I think we've grown way too accustomed to tinkering with technology when we don't always want to be doing that. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Drew, there's one more question here regarding gain staging. And this is more about how gain staging works with respect to some of the plugins. So this is coming again from Matt Wright. When gain staging in a mix is -12, -18 dB, about the right volume for UAD plugin emulations to react as per the hardware. I'm assuming that that's, again, kind of a loaded question, especially considering that like a lot of the plugins actually have different settings that you could apply how they deal with headroom. I mean, is there a general answer to that question?
Yeah, if you look at the manual, if you read the manual, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but like
who reads the manual?
Yeah, well, we do talk about like the calibration and that we did and so forth, but quite frankly, and I see this a lot, it seems like it's something, it actually feels like it's ramping up where people seem to be fixated on this concept of gain staging. And you'll notice how Jacquire kind of was a little bit looking for an answer, and that's because gain staging it is a feel thing. It's a feeling kind of a thing. 2 weeks ago, our guy Matt Peterson did a great Luna office hours on gain staging with Unison plugins. I picked up a couple of tips. I've been doing this stuff for years, and I picked up a couple of tips. So I would encourage people to watch that. And you saw Jacquire, who was kind of being like back and forth with it, because it is a feel thing. You're gain staging at the preamp level, and when it comes to Unison preamps, you have multiple gain stages. You have the initial gain, you have the output fader, and then you have the digital gain. All of that was gone over by Matt in the video. And then I mentioned earlier, this idea of Luna helping you gain stage. This is not an appropriate song, but as you can imagine, if you can imagine this, I really like the tape and the summing. The tape and the summing all have these VU meters, and tape in particular reacts differently based on frequency content. So that's why it's a hard question to answer, because it's dependent. You saw heard Jacquire talk about a hi-hat. Well, a Moog synth bass is going to react entirely different than a hi-hat. So it has different, you would gain stage that differently. And one of the beautiful things about Luna is these meters. So you have these VU meters on the tape. And these, if you actually keep this open, right, you don't have to keep it open on the extended side. You can keep just this open. And as you work, right, As you record something and play it back, you can watch this meter, and it will tell you. It will guide you. If something is really low end heavy, then that meter could be driving harder, and you might in the back of your mind, you'll say to yourself, oh, well, I need to track low end heavy stuff a little bit more conservatively, and kind of let these tape meters teach you how to do that. You also heard Jacquire talk about the fader positions. A sure sign that you have gain staging issues is if you find that you're having to jack faders up well above zero, or the inverse, if you're having to pull faders way down, or if you're having to pull your bus masters way down. That's a sign that you've tracked your individual tracks too hot. You're feeding them into a bus, and now in order to keep the stereo bus from clipping, you're having to pull all of your buses down. I think generally speaking, all of your individual channels shouldn't be anywhere from maybe -10 to +2 or 3 in that range, and your buses similarly. If you find that you're radically away from any of that, then you're probably tracking too hot. Quite frankly, that's the main thing that people do. People just track too hot.
Yeah.
And then they wind up having to clip gain everything down. And again, if you download that Cass McCombs session, you'll see that things are not being cranked up to within an inch of their life, so to speak. So and hopefully that's a succinct enough answer to satisfy Matt. But there is no hard and fast rule, but I do think that Luna, the tape, and the Neve summing actually will guide you. That and fader position, and then you work backwards from there, and then you can kind of teach yourself where to track to. Cool.
All right, Drew. I think it's about time we wrap this up. I think we've covered a lot of stuff. I've already posted some of the links in the chat. That'll be available on the replay, but I'll also post some more links in the comments. There's definitely a lot of good stuff to check out. I think major takeaways are, well, download Luna, download the Sphere software from the Townsend Labs website. And then check out the Cass McCombs session, and
the Atticus Ross one. The Atticus Ross.
I haven't seen that one, or I haven't heard it. Yeah,
definitely check it out. He did something really special there. It's called Rotation. It features the Mini Moog, but he's got some other stuff going on in there. Right. And if you're a fan of electronic music, and if you want to know how to craft that and build suspense, and it's a really cool session. I definitely encourage people to check it out.
That's what I'm gonna do next.
Good. And then you'll have fun with it.
Yeah, and then of course the Sphere core sessions, the demo sessions that we've prepared for Luna, they're available. I'm going to post that link again, and it'll be up on our website very soon as well. So there's a lot of stuff to check out, and I think it'll be really valuable for people to play around with this. And I mean, I've just learned so much just familiarizing myself with Luna a little bit, and I'm going to get deeper into it, and hopefully some of the people watching will do the same, and see how the Sphere fits into that workflow. But it's, I really think it's a great match, and it gives you kind of the real workflow benefits, but also that amazing sound that we get from all of these classic emulations. So it's
Jacquire said it's the future. So and I tend to agree. So
yeah, for sure,
it's gonna be fun.
All right, man. Well, hopefully we can do this again sometime.
Would love to.
Thanks to you, for the support. It's been really cool working with you guys. Again, thanks to Jacquire. He's already off, but it was great having him. And thanks to all of you guys out there contributing. We're gonna have more Q&As coming up. We're not doing them at the frequency as UA, but we're going to keep it going. We have other cool things planned. Again, there's a video with Jason Goldberg coming. There's that Cassidy Turbin video where he used the Sphere mic in 180 mode for an electric guitar. It's going to be really cool. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell over there so you don't miss it. So, that sort of thing. And let me know what you want to hear about in the next Q&As. Let us know how Luna works out for you, for sure. And I think what I'm supposed to say for the UA guys is hit that feedback button. I've been hearing that a lot.
Yeah.
Cool, man. All right, Drew. Thank you again. And
thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk soon. And
bye, everybody.
There'll be more coming. Thank you.